Hello, everyone. Before we get started, if you would like to support this channel, you can purchase my books, and there's a link in the description section. My latest book is The Ecstasy and the Ignominy, which is essentially a combination of A Tale of Two Cities, Anna Karenina, a bit of Crime and Punishment. It has a very Shakespearean, sometimes Dickensian, Melvillian even style. So if you would like to support this channel, you can do that. Um, but today's topic is going to be about something that's rather novel. It's going to be about um, how pretentious readers and anti-intellectual readers are actually two sides of the same coin, in my opinion. Now, I am not talking about readers who are genuinely interested in classic literature like myself, who believe in the intellectual substance of classic literature. Those readers are invaluable, and I treasure them with all my heart. But I'm talking about pretentious readers who seem to, and I know pretentious is a loaded word. I really don't like that term very much. I think that it's highly overused and subjective. But my definition of pretentious is when someone pretends to be interested in something that they may not actually be interested in deep down. It's not someone who genuinely loves classic literature or highbrow literature or whatever. It's someone who is pretending to be something that they're not. They're the kind of person who they'll say they've read something even if they haven't, um, just so they can project a certain kind of image. A pretentious person to me is simply someone who may even have normal or mundane interests, but they're afraid of admitting it because they don't want to look mundane, so they try to seem more intelligent than perhaps they really are, um, or at least how they feel. And so they try to project an image that is not actually being honest with who they actually are or who they feel they are deep down. And and so to me, that's my definition of pretentious. And there are a lot of readers, for example, who don't actually value the intellectual substance of classic literature. What they like is they like the aesthetics of it. They like what classic literature can do for them. Um, they don't actually want to engage with classic literature on a deep level. They're the kind of person who will say who will comment often on the aesthetics of classic literature. They'll say something like, usually in a very vague way. They're usually not going into the technical detail of it, but they may say something like, "That was beautiful," or something like that. But they very rarely go deeper. It's not now compliments like that. I do like compliments like that. I like it when readers compliment me on the aesthetics of what I do, but it's when they don't go deeper, when they're only on the surface. Sometimes it can make it seem like they're only using um, the kind of literature that I write in order to prop themselves up. That it's more about, hey, look at me, I'm into this complex literary fiction. That means I'm smart. But they're not actually engaging with the literature on a deep level. It's purely to make them feel better about themselves. And to me, I actually think that that is just as bad, in my opinion, as the anti-intellectual readers who blatantly just do not like classic literature, who will blatantly say, "Oh, classic literature is boring. It's not for me. It's too complex. Give me something simple," um, because the anti-intellectual is insecure because when they encounter literature that is complex or challenges them, they want to then say there's something wrong with the author instead of there's something wrong with them, because that makes them feel less secure and more powerful. So when an anti-intellectual reader puts an author down, a work of complex literature down, they're doing it in order to preserve their own image, that they have of their identity. And it's about feeling more secure because classic literature makes them feel insecure. Well, with the pretentious reader, they classic literature also makes them feel insecure, but instead of hating it, they try to act like they enjoy it or like it. Whereas deep down, they may actually share many of the same contempt and prejudices of the anti intellectual reader, but they're afraid, but they don't want to be as honest as the anti-intellectual reader. The anti-intellectual reader is at least being more honest in their hostility, whereas the pretentious reader is trying to mask their hostility more in admiration because they don't want to be seen as someone who just doesn't get it. And so, in that regard, I think that so-called pretentious readers, literary snobs, um, can be just as bad when it comes to not appreciating literature on a deep level as anti-intellectual readers who are at least more honest about it. That they're still insecure, they're still battling insecurities, but they're more honest about their insecurities um, when they try when they become angry. Whereas the pretentious reader still has insecurities about not understanding classic literature, but they're trying to mask it with a shallow appreciation. And so, to me, that can make it where, especially for someone like me, where we feel like we don't actually have readers who genuinely appreciate our work. That we either encounter readers who are just blatantly anti-intellectual, that don't want to engage with our work on a serious level. That if they don't understand something, therefore the author is just being pretentious, and the problem isn't with them, because people will often instead of saying, well, that there's something about this that I don't understand, or perhaps this kind of literature just isn't for me, what they'll do is that they'll say, oh, there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with the author, um, when in reality this person is just trapped in an anti-intellectual culture where people are afraid to be challenged, because to be challenged is to be perceived as being dumb or stupid. And so because we live in a culture where people are so afraid of making mistakes, people are so afraid of admitting that they don't understand something, then rather than admit that and trying to learn from it, they'll put the problem on the author and say, well, the problem is the author just isn't being clear enough. And that's the problem with the anti-intellectual. Um, the problem with the pretentious person is that the pretentious person also has many of those same insecurities, and they are also not appreciating literature on a deep level. Um, but instead that they are trying to appreciate it on a purely shallow aesthetic level, but they're not actually digging deeper, because for them it's all about the image that they are projecting, not about genuine appreciation for literature or for the art form itself. And so, in that regard, I think pretentious readers and anti-intellectual readers are often two sides of the same coin. And and this creates something where authors can't feel like they're truly appreciated, because they're either having to deal with the anti-intellectual reader, or they're having to deal with the pretentious reader, and they're not engaging with readers who will appreciate the aesthetics, yes, but will then go far deeper. And again, I am not talking though here about what you might call lazy readers, or people who genuinely enjoy literature, um, but sometimes they don't read as much as they should because they get lazy. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about people who appreciate literature solely as a means of social status and nothing else. And this can be frustrating for the author, because they can encounter people who either show blatant contempt for their work, or they're fake about it. It's kind of like artists, for example, who encounter people who just have blatant contempt for them in their workplace, but then there's but they encounter art critics, for example, who say, yes, yes, that's what this means. But the art critic isn't actually being serious. They're just trying to gain some kind of social clout from it, but they're not actually appreciating the artwork on a deep level. And so, in that regard, I think that some literary snobs and anti-intellectual people are two sides of the same coin. Um, they're two wings on the same bird, and I could go on. And so, I think that more writers need to learn to differentiate um, between genuine appreciation and fake appreciation. And I'll give you an example. Like for example, I was going I'm probably going to write this story someday about a student, a high school student, or something, who writes poetry or whatever, or poetic passages or whatever, and he has this teacher who she doesn't genuinely appreciate his poetry, but who tries to appreciate his poetry, but you can tell she's only doing it not because she sincerely loves it, but because she's trying to uplift herself because she lives in this sports culture that she doesn't want to be a part of, even though in many ways she likes the sports culture, but she doesn't want to be seen as boring or mundane, so she acts like she has contempt for it. Um, but then over time, as she tries to fight the cultural tide of the school and she becomes disillusioned, and pressure is put on her to change by the curriculum and all of that, and she has arguments with those other students about about the relevancy of poetry and all of that. And as the student's poetry becomes more esoteric, and she starts becoming intimidated by it, eventually she then just snaps and gives a rant about how she thinks that poetry is pretentious and just a way for people to hide from from the real world, and how real beauty is found not in abstraction but in the physicality of sports. And it's just it's her basically becoming entirely disillusioned with herself. And this story would not be it's not a diatribe against poetry. It's about a diatribe against certain people who live pretentious lives, that she didn't actually love poetry for the sake of it. And then there will be a scene where the student develops a relationship with a janitor who genuinely loves poetry, not for what it can give him, but for but for its own sake. And then so you have this teacher who just becomes completely disillusioned, and it's really a tragedy on her part. It's a tragedy because she didn't appreciate poetry for the beauty of it, for the love of it, because that's why you should really love poetry. She appreciated it for what it could give her, the social clout and status it could give her. I think that story would be a perfect representation. I haven't written it yet, but it may be a short story or a novella or something. It wouldn't be a full length novel. But and again, I'm not saying even though that it's wrong to appreciate the aesthetics, or even or even take pride in the social clout that being intellectual or believing in high literature can give you. I think you can do that if you have a genuine appreciation and love for poetry or for beautiful writing that is the foundation of it. But if you don't have that, and you just have the desire to be admired, but you don't have that genuine love, that is what can lead to destruction. It's when that foundation is not there. And so, for that reason, I do believe that pretentious readers and anti-intellectual readers are often two sides of the same coin. That they're both products of the anti-intellectual culture that we live in. Um, one is more honest and open about it. The other is more it tries to mask their anti-intellectualism um, in in pretension and and in shallow appreciation, but they are also the victim of it as well, just in a different way. And so I do believe this revelation is profound. I wish more people would come to this realization like I have, because I do think it is an astute observation in many ways. And it's something that I think people need to keep in mind, especially writers, when they are dealing with various kinds of fans. Is this person a true fan, or are they just trying to use your work to uplift their identity, but they don't actually care about the substance of it? I think that's a question that all writers need to ask when they engage with readers and appreciation. And so, with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Um, Again, my books are linked in the description section. And until next time, goodbye.